even the intimacy, sexual intercourse for some men is performance, and that ties to their masculinity.
Do you think there was identity themes in there then?
Yes, yes. His identity as a fisherman was tied to his concept of masculinity, which is how he saw himself as a man, and he needed to feel competent. The Old Man and the Sea, a short story by Ernest Hemingway.
How would you describe the book?
Although it seems simple on the surface, it's quite a deep piece of literature. I would say it's about man's place in the world, and particularly in nature. And what about you?
I know it sounds a bit strange, but it gave me an experience, a specific sensation as if I was in there on the boat with the man. In terms of like philosophical meaning, I'm struggling.
Struggling. Well, what you just described, I think it's known to be Hemingway's style of writing, which is minimalistic and very sharp. It doesn't use so many extra words like Dostoevsky does, I think. But so that your copy is vintage Hemingway, and
This is my copy.
yeah, mine is the penguin one.
I just love the
Yeah.
drawing, the picture on this. I think
Okay.
it's
I
so
prefer
good.
mine.
The story is about a man who sets out in the sea. He's not caught a fish for a long time. And eventually, when he goes out this time, he catches this big, big fish that he admires at the same time. And the book is about basically his adventure or
Yeah.
his time in the sea with the fish.
He can't really control the fish. The fish is, taking over and taking the boat and him with it. Eventually, he overcomes the fish. What's important is his thoughts. He has a conversation with the fish. He's like, "Yeah, I'm gonna get you," and then sometimes he's like, "I love you, but I have to get you. I have to kill you." He's got this conflict going on. What I see is he's trying to make meaning out of this experience of this hunting experience. Even when he's pursued by the sharks, again, he talks to them. He makes meaning out of it. It tells me that we as human beings, we are meaning-making creatures. However, nature does not necessarily have any meaning, but we struggle because we portray our meanings into nature. A part of us belongs to nature, which is, this meaningless cycle of life. We are hunting or being hunted, but another part of us looks for meaning, and that's also the reason we have so many religions in the world, and we want to make sense of our experiences.
Can I
And
say?
this is the conflict that this old man has. He he becomes, in the story, he's part of this cycle of nature, but at the same time he's portraying meaning into it as well.
That reminds me, actually, I've heard, you probably have heard as well, where people say nature is cruel,
Yeah.
as if nature has a sense of morality. So, for example, you see preys and you see some animals, you see hunters, and sort of they're preying on the prey. And the prey is supposed to be very innocent, and the animals like lions and tigers are supposed to be cruel, or eagles, especially eagles, because of the way they kill, or wild dogs, the way they kill and they eat their prey. So I think that makes sense, because I really struggled with the philosophical approach of the book. I know it had a deep meaning, but I really struggled. So that does make sense, how we give meaning to the nature, but nature on its own, it does have a meaning. It's just a different meaning. It's not how we want to see it. It's different. It's not. It doesn't have a narrative.
It's funny because he gets caught up in the middle of this cycle where the sharks come to eat the fish that he's captured, and there's no meaning between them. The sharks eat the fish eat other fishes, and just the cycle goes on. But he's in the middle of all this, and he just feels so odd to be in the middle of it, and you feel that oddness of man in nature. Like he doesn't, like he's questioning himself, like, what am I doing here?
Because it's a bit lost, isn't it? You're right. He doesn't know where he stands in between the fish and the sharks who were trying to
Yeah,
get the fish.
yeah,
There was something that I liked about the story, not necessarily about the sort of deep meaning, but about the feeling that it gave me. I, from the moment I started reading the book, I thought that I was on the boat with the man. I felt like I saw him catch the fish. I was there when he was thinking about getting salt, and I wish I had salt, in the boat. So I felt like I was with him. I love that sort of storytelling, and it was very unique to me.
yeah.
Like you said, it probably is Hemingway style. It was the first book that I read from Hemingway as well. The other thing that I liked about the book was the repetition that was in the book, but it was very precise in what was the repetition. So, for example, I wish the boy was here. That's repeated quite often in the book, where the man is thinking
When he is at the sea.
when he's, yes, in the
Yeah.
sea. And I wondered if that is a reflection of the waves in the sea, because the waves are sort of coming consistently. It's calm, the sea's calm, well, when he sets out. And that repetition again, he's calm, the thoughts are calmly coming to him, but in repetition. So I wondered if that was a reflection of the sea, to give the reader that feeling that you're in the sea and there's that calmness, but that also that repetition in there. The way Hemingway writes in this book is that we never hear about the man's feelings. We only hear his thoughts. And from his thoughts, we gather his feelings. And I thought that was a very clever way to put it across to the reader. So my question is, I couldn't help but notice that the old man kept talking to his body parts as if they were separate to him.
There's this concept that we know, masculinity as performance. And, for some men, they may look at their body as a tool as a tool that has to perform for them.
Oh.
And this is what I see in him when he talks about, he's saying, come on, hand, come on, do this and do that, because he sees himself as this figure that has to perform as a man in the sea, as a hunter. He has to be able to be strong, and that's why at times he goes, I need to eat the sardine, I need to eat the fish, I need to be strong, I need to get rest. It's all about him being able to perform. So all his body parts are tools to help him perform. And I think that speaks to the concept of masculinity, what it means to be a man.
I love that.
Yeah, so for some men, what it means to be a man is to be able to perform.
Do you think that changes? That's such an interesting concept. Do you think that sense of masculinity and performance changes with the man's culture or context that he lives in?
Of course, if somebody comes from a sport background, then they see performance in that particular field, I think.
I just think that the whole concept of masculinity and how performance in some men, is seen as a way to be masculine. And for him, the fisherman is his body parts and being able to fish.
Even, the intimacy, sexual intercourse for some men is performance. And that ties to their masculinity. And if they feel like they cannot perform, they take it very personal, because it's part of their masculine identity. It's part of who they are as a man.
Wow. So do you think there was identity themes in there then?
Yes. His identity as a fisherman was tied to his concept of masculinity, which is how he saw himself as a man. And he needed to feel competent.
That's amazing. That makes me think about relationships and what you said about men and performances. And I think it just shows how sometimes, if you don't know about these things as a woman, you can be insensitive to the man, just because it can be also the way around. But, we hear a lot about what makes women sensitive, but also it's good to hear also about what is sensitive to men, and what could a woman say to question a man's identity in his field of, whether it's job, whatever it is.
I see Hemingway himself in the old man. And we know Hemingway was, the old-fashioned, traditional man who wanted to feel like a man. He wanted to be out there hunting, and he did do a lot of hunting. And I think he portrayed a lot of himself into this character in the story.
that actually answered my next question I had. That did you think this book had some Hemingway in him? Because obviously, with Hemingway's background being in hunting
Yeah.
himself, and actually, there's a part in the book where the fisherman is questioning why he's catching the fish, and he talks about where he needs to eat, he needs to make a living. But we know that Hemingway was a trophy hunter. So I wonder if Hemingway also had his thoughts. But at the same time, I wonder with Hemingway being a different hunter than the fisherman, what did he say to himself to justify the hunting for himself?
Exactly. I had this question that what would he think when he's doing all of that? And I think this book gives you some answers. That it's not, him being necessarily just cruel 100%. He has to justify it.
He has to
And
justify
this
it.
old man justifies it while he's doing it.
Yes.
And so Hemingway, he also had justified it in a similar way.
Yes. And it's just been eating me alive thinking about what he could have said, Hemingway himself, to justify the act of trophy hunting, because I cannot think of anything.
For me, Hemingway, I don't know if I'm right. Again, for me, Hemingway, he's very fascinated by death. Maybe hunting was a way for him to get closer to what actually death is.
I have to say, I don't think it was, and I hear this a lot where people say Hemingway was obsessed, and I'm not saying you're saying this, or sort of fascinated with death, with the concept of death. I don't think it was that. I think it was fear. So we have our most fear around death usually, and I think that's where he was fascinated by, or with the concept of the fear that we experience, and I actually made a video on that based on how he was not obsessed with death. Well, that's my thinking anyway. It's very subjective. Would you recommend it?
Of course, I would recommend it.
I would recommend it, although I didn't connect to the book in the way that you connected to a book. I think it was a very manly book. But as a woman, I think I understood a lot about what men think. And also, apart from that, the experience that I had just being on the boat, I feel like I fished. I've never been fishing, and I actually feel like I have been fishing.